Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Friday last episode of the week here of Trending Politics Live. I'm about to bring on my special guest here, everyone, but I want to give everyone just a second here to bring it all in. We have an absolutely packed show today. So much is happening, as all of you know. So my special guest today is Rod Thompson, and I'm about to bring him in here. He has been in the world of politics, broadcasting. He's an award-winning journalist for over 25 years. I'm going to bring him in here from therevolutionaryact.com. He's going to help me get into all the news of the day. Rod, how's it going, my friend?
It's going great. Really glad to be on the show, Clayton.
All right, awesome. So can you tell our audience just a little bit about your background, your history in the world of politics, and then maybe just a little bit of an anecdote before we really dive into all the world of politics that's going on today?
Yeah, sure. I spent 25 years in daily newspapers. I worked at newspapers in Minnesota, Iowa, and here in Florida, where I live now in Iowa. I covered the 1988 caucuses, presidential caucuses. So among the things I got to do there was I got to interview Ronald Reagan, which is, of course, great. Yep. And awesome. But also people like Al Gore and people you might not remember, Richard Gephardt and others, George H.W. Bush, a couple presidents, So that's always that's fun stuff. Yep.
Great.
And then in Florida here, I worked for the Sarasota Herald Tribune, but I also worked for New York Times regional newspapers and covered politics in Tallahassee in the 90s and all. I wrote a column for about 6 years in the early 2000s, and I've been a regular guest on ABC, on their panels, on radio shows, podcasts, of course, which are great.
Yeah.
And I've had my own company now for 8 years, the Thompson Group, and we do messaging and communications for political clients, Republican Party and candidates, particularly around the state of Florida. But we also do it outside of political stuff too. We have organizations and that sort of thing. So that's what I do. I'm a words guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I met you originally through your videos on TikTok, really powerful insights, and we're going to get into some of those insights today. So actually, I'm going to start off. We just uploaded a clip right before going live. It's not going to be too much from what we talked about here, but Nancy Pelosi, we all know the crazy hypocrisy that Nancy Pelosi within the last week, right? Well, the GOP just released this brutal new ad. I'm not sure if you've seen it. Everybody, buckle in your seatbelts because this is a good one. Check this out.
This closure is absolutely devastating to businesses like hair salons.
A homeless man arrested for violating the mandatory mask order.
The hair salon owner who opened up her store has been jailed.
You must wear your mask. Wear the mask. This is the president who doesn't want to wear a mask. No one is above the law.
Nancy Pelosi was seen not wearing a face mask at a San Francisco hair salon.
Day before, Pelosi was saying that those people who don't wear masks, who don't follow rules, are bad people.
Not wearing a mask and having haircuts indoors against the rules there.
Be an example to the country and wear the mask.
Nancy Pelosi appears to have violated.
I'm a big believer in wearing the mask.
Next time, Madam Speaker, why don't you see if someone will come to your house?
You must wear your mask. Wear masks at all times.
Rules for thee, not for me.
And to blame others. Leaders take responsibility.
So I take responsibility for falling for a setup.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi claims she was set up.
So the Speaker of the House is blaming the salon after she didn't wear a mask indoors.
And now she's having lawyers get involved to dox this poor salon owner who has been shut down for 6 months.
We haven't worked. We have no income. Since this happened, I have received nothing but hate, text messages, death threats. They're going to burn my hair salon down.
I think that that this salon owes me an apology.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much done there. So,
in the meantime, Nancy Pelosi is overseeing a legislative negotiation in which salons like the one that she went to would not get any money.
We have bills to pay. So upsetting, and it's devastating.
Pelosi is being decimated for having a beauty parlor opened when all others are closed.
Financially, it's broke us.
The timestamp on the video says 3:08 p.m. Less than 3 hours later, she appeared on MSNBC with perfectly coiffed hair, lecturing everyone else.
Those people there, no mask, and what a bad example that was.
I mean, you wouldn't want to go into your freezer with that kind of ice cream, not looking your best.
Wow, I mean, that ad in your history, Rod, of being in politics, where do you rate that ad on a scale of 1 to 10? It was a little longer than some political ads out there, but oh my goodness, that was brutal.
Just the word I was going to use. That was a brutal ad. Of course, I mean, it helps when you have opponents like Nancy Pelosi. She made the ad for them, essentially. I mean, when you just walk right into it and serve it up on a silver platter, it makes it kind of easy. I mean, it's not like Trump doesn't occasionally do that sort of thing too, but my gosh, this thing really got some traction. Now, I will say that, number one, it's too long. And oftentimes these are too long, and I think that they slice them and dice them when they're putting them on like Hulu and other platforms where they're trying to reach people. They make them much shorter because there's specific time slots for them. But also, I read through a couple of newspapers this morning. There wasn't a story on it. I don't think the mainstream media is doing anything with it that I've seen. And so, I subscribe to a lot. I don't read them all every day, but I need to for my business. And I'm not seeing any stories on it. So it's got to be done through ads. This is why Republicans need to raise so much money, because they always have to try and bypass the mainstream media.
Exactly. And the great thing is that the Republicans and Trump are raising a ton of money. President Trump has been raising money since 2017. So that ad to me, I mean, my goodness, just the hypocrisy. I didn't even see the last part of the ad where she talked, just 2.5 hours later, she was on TV, basically judging people and lecturing them about not wearing a mask. And she is getting her hair did up without a mask on. What a load of hypocrisy. Yesterday, Kayleigh McEnany, I showed the video on my live show yesterday, Kayleigh McEnany just playing that video on loop. I mean, just hammered her over and over again. So yeah, I believe if they cut that ad down and we're able to make that into like a 30-second ad spot, because I think at some point we kind of get it. We kind of get, hey, she said this and then this happened. Now they kind of beat a dead horse there. But I think that at the end of the day, if they can cut that down to a 30-second ad and run that up, run up the score on that one, that's going to be really good. So everyone, there is, a brand new lie being told out there in the mainstream media. And of course, you're not going to be surprised at all about it. Basically, The Atlantic has come out with a story claiming we have no evidence, we have no audio. What is the only piece of evidence that the liberal media is giving us right now? They are saying that an anonymous source has said that Trump called vets who passed away losers. Really? Does anyone in the world actually believe this, first and foremost? Second of all, it was from an anonymous source. So, Rod, what was your first reaction? I'm going to bring up some tweets here in a second, but what was your first reaction to this ridiculous claim that the left is now just picking up the ball and running with it full speed?
Two things. One, first of all, nobody believes this, really. I don't believe the Atlantic Monthly reporters believe it, or their editors. Nobody believes he says this at all. But they will use it, of course. They will completely use it. The other thing is that I think that the real death knell for it is that this happened 2 years ago, and nobody did a story on it until now. It didn't leak out until now. We didn't hear about it until now. Okay, if you've been alive in the past 2 years, there's no way you can buy that one. Look, it's just like the Mount Rushmore speech, where the New York Times and Washington Post both ran stories about him referring to Confederate soldiers and Confederate generals, the Confederacy, when he never mentioned them once. There's sort of whitewashing things, there's being biased and all, but now you're seeing the media actually just flat out make things up on a regular basis. Not even with like Trump Russia, they had Congress where they could say, well, we're just reporting, but now they're just making it up on the fly. No wonder they don't have any credibility or trust with the public, Clayton.
Well, what's funny is that they think that they do, I mean, okay, so this might be a perfect transition. You posted this to your Facebook page a couple days ago, and it's a quote from the amazing book, 1984. Let me bring it up here. I actually have the book right here for you. And George Orwell, he wrote this in it was the 40s, I believe. Was that right?
Yes.
He wrote this in the 40s. And this is the quote. Guys, this is not... a guy who just wrote this after seeing what's happening. This is a guy who wrote this 60 years ago. Check this out, everyone. In his book, 1984, George Orwell wrote, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered, and the process is continuing. day by day, minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. And in that book, you have them pushing propaganda as you've seen is 2 + 2 = 5. They're trying to present. Now, this is happening in our day-to-day lives. They're trying to say, this is what's happening, everyone, and they're expecting the American people to believe this. Now, it's bad enough that it was an anonymous source and that this happened last night, but the Joe Biden campaign is so desperate for a little bit of momentum that they were able to craft an ad on the fly about this story. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but here's what they were able to conjure literally overnight. His quotes saying it's filled with losers, really, okay? Suckers. Does anybody believe this in the world? Acting as if it's an actual quote. We are not supposed to support that loser's view. Guys, I mean, this is just pissing me off here. But so now let me play Joe Biden, not only, but he's doubling down on it. A doubling down in absolute lie. And then we're going to debunk this here in a second, okay? So Joe Biden decides that it's going to be a great idea to just pick this lie up and run with it because he has been so hammered with all the negative news surrounding him over the last few weeks that Mr. Joe Biden decided to say this today.
The president reportedly said, and I emphasize reportedly said, that those who sign up to serve instead of doing something more lucrative are suckers. Let me be real clear. When my son was an assistant U.S. attorney and he volunteered to go to Kosovo while the war was going on as a civilian, he wasn't a sucker.
So Joe Biden is already running with this, everybody, and you see how he tries to save himself? He says, reportedly said, and I emphasize reportedly, and then begins to push the lie. I mean, what is your reaction to Joe Biden already picking up and running with this? And what is your overall response?
So a couple of thoughts. You mentioned, you said they conjured it up overnight. I'm not sure they needed to. My suspicion is they knew about this Atlantic story coming, and they were ready to use it. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate how much the media, which my beloved media, that is not the same as it was in the 80s and 90s. It was biased then, but it wasn't like it is now.
Yes.
I don't think you can underestimate the degree to which they actually organize and work with Democrats in the Republican Party. Not a grand conspiracy. There's just a bunch of fellow travelers, to use a phrase, and that's what they do. The other part is that obviously it's unbelievable prima facie on the face of it, but I mean, if you look at the evidence, Trump has been rebuilding the military. He has totally restored the Veterans Administration and the veterans hospitals, I mean, really making them so much better. Sarah Huckabee Sanders and our governor, Governor DeSantis, were with him at the time of those. They allegedly said, they claim it's a complete lie. You put it all together and you realize that the Atlantic Monthly is operating as a Democrat operative would operate. I've talked to a lot of people about this, Clayton. I said, start thinking, if you will, because, I mean, I know a little bit about how to spin things. And so start thinking about how you would take a potential story and spin it, and how you would use it if you were trying to elect your guy. Yes. And you will start seeing exactly what the media is doing. You will understand the media coverage. If you look at the media, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, as operating like a Democrat operative would, a lot of the coverage starts making sense. You're not going, this is terrible journalism and everything. Well, but it's good Democrat operations.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, your entire time of being in this industry, has there ever been a time that to where a party is literally a propaganda arm? I mean, sorry, the media has literally been a propaganda arm of a political party at all.
No, never like this. I mean, it's all new. I mean, it's been trending. I remember. I mean, I was in newsrooms in the 80s, and when I hear journalists now talking about how great things were in the 80s, they despised Ronald Reagan. He was a cowboy. He was dangerous to have his finger on the button. I mean, they thought he was dumb, a B actor. They had the monkey movie that he did. They used that name with him. I mean, media newsrooms disliked him. They hated, but it got new with George W. Bush was the time when you started with, he was the first derangement syndrome, Bush derangement syndrome, when you had the Bush lied, people died. You had the lady whose son was killed in Afghanistan or somewhere, and she would go Code Pink, I think it was, and they would go pick it out at the Bush's ranch all the time, and the media covered that stuff incessantly.
Yeah.
The media took a nap for 8 years during Obama, in which every single scandal, I mean, the most corrupt and scandalous administration, certainly in my lifetime, one of the most in our history, without doubt. And they can go around and claim being corruption-free, and happily so, because the media, apparently, if the media doesn't report it, it didn't happen. But then with Trump, Clayton, this is like geometrically at a new level with Trump.
Yes.
All of the scales have come off now. It is all blatant and out there. And you see that even back in 2017, when you saw the constant stream of leaks that was going from Congress and from within the State Department and within the FBI to the New York Times specifically, was getting a ton of these and leaking them out over and over and over. And you realized at that point that now these operations are joined at the hip. There isn't a watchdog role going on here at all. I mean, if there was, for goodness sake, somebody would require that Joe Biden actually answer a question from a journalist. But we are, 2 months away, and he still hasn't. He could barely get through a teleprompter.
I mean, in fact, I'm going to bring up a clip right here. This is from the same speech that I'll show you today. But, something that you said to me was very interesting about this whole story, about Trump calling these people losers or whatever, is that if this happened 2 years ago, do you think the media is at any shortage of a like that they would want to wait at all for a bad story about President Trump? I mean, they are chomping at the bit 24/7. And this isn't even worthy of an October surprise, because we're just about to hit Labor Day, where most of mainstream Americans start to tune in. So maybe this is what they want to be on their mind. I don't know. But at the same time, 2 years, really? And then also, why didn't it come up then? And second of all, if you don't have audio of it, if you don't have audio of it, that's not. So on your point about Joe Biden, not only is he not taking questions from journalists like Chris Wallace and Fox News, even though they have said repeatedly, we've reached out. I don't know. This guy is not reaching back out to us. But in today's press conference, he's like kind of like, well, I wasn't given a list. So you guys, can you go ahead and call on people for me? Literally, this man is needing his staff to call on people for him. Check this out.
Thank you all. And I now take your questions. I guess, are you calling on people, or how am I? I don't have a list, so you go ahead and call.
Thank you, sir.
So I mean, the guy can't even call on his own. Can you please? I don't have a list with me. Can you imagine if this was if President Trump had this kind of leniency with the media? I mean, my goodness.
So you know what that list is about? That to me, that's referring back to the audio clip of the lady in the black church from a couple of days ago, when she said, "I know I'm supposed to ask the question off this list because he has is because he's referring to it. He has a teleprompter and he had a sheet of papers up there at the church. I don't think he had a teleprompter. I take that back, but he had the sheet of papers up at the church there, and what they did was they had questions for him in order, and he had answers for them in order. And so she said, no, I need to ask my own question. Her question was not well-founded in truth, I thought. But nonetheless, she wouldn't read off the list. That's what he's referring to. He needs to know who's going to call on who in order so that he can give the right preordained answer in order.
Yep.
I don't know how they drag him to the finish line of this race and keep hiding him, even with the media providing shelter.
I know. I mean, they're propping him up in a huge way. And one of the things that I thought about is, someone was asking me on Instagram, they sent in a question and they said, why would the Democrats go with Joe Biden when they know he's this bad? And I told them, look, I think he has fallen off a cliff I think he has fallen off a cliff health-wise, physically, mentally, over the past couple of months. It was bad in the early part of this year, but he was at least able to be on stage with Bernie Sanders and kind of keep it together. Now the poor guy cannot even read a teleprompter. I mean, I don't think the Democrats quite saw this coming. I think they said, he's going to be good enough. And then he stormed through Bernie Sanders. Everyone coalesced around Biden, and then this dude's mental acuity just kind of took a nosedive, if you will.
No, I think you're right on the button there. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because if you look at a lot of the debates that he was involved with late last year and early this year, this is not the same Joe Biden. I mean, the man was never a rocket scientist. I mean, there's a reason why he kept getting caught for plagiarizing people.
Yes.
But that killed his first presidential run. It killed his thesis in college. I mean, he's not the brightest bulb. But that aside, he could hold his own in, sort of political hackery form, right? That's not the highest bar in the world.
We all remember the famous vice presidential debate with Paul Ryan, right? Or he's just like he's just doing this weird, awkward laughs and everything.
Exactly. But now what you've seen, and clearly the Democrats, when the party establishment was pushing him as the moderate that could beat Trump, they were afraid of a socialist, a Bernie Sanders or somebody, and they wanted to push him. They got what's his name in South Carolina to endorse him before the South Carolina primary. The congressman there, a lot of pull there, and that coalesced, and that gave him all the momentum. That endorsement was just gigantic.
Yep.
But the thing is that nobody saw this decline coming, and you don't usually. I mean, I have two parents that have passed on now. My mom had Alzheimer's, and Dad was going nearer the end, and it's kind of all of a sudden sort of thing starts happening. You start realizing they're not there. That's exactly what I'm seeing. Even that clip you just showed, Clayton, when he was asking about, the list and all, he's looking around. There is confusion in his eyes. And when I see that confusion, even though I think he's been a brutally mean man in his political career, I mean, he's been a backstabber. He was the leader of the charge against Clarence Thomas, the slandering of him. That was his committee that ran that. I mean, he was just not a nice person at all. I look at that and I feel bad for him, because this man is confused about what's going on a lot. And usually once it starts sliding downhill like this, it keeps sliding.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone. So I was telling my audience here the day after his DNC speech, I said, I got to be honest, some of this positive press about Joe Biden, about his speech last night, is kind of our fault, because we put the expectations so low. We said, man, this guy can't complete a sentence. And we've kept saying it over and over and over again. Well, he was, again, it's not a huge accomplishment when you can read from a teleprompter for 20 minutes, right? But we set the expectations so low. So all he literally, as Ben Shapiro says, all he literally had to do was not die that night, and he would have been okay. And sure enough, he didn't keel over that night. So he was declared, he's awesome. And Chris Wallace, for some reason, said that speech was great. So it was the soft bigotry of low expectations. And but in all the subsequent interviews, things that he's been doing, he is clearly not all there. He looks very lost. He has no command, no presence to him. And just to kind of put a bow on this whole thing with President Trump saying this, slandering the fallen heroes, a man who is no fan of President Trump, John Bolton, has even said that this is not true. Benny Johnson from Turning Point USA says multiple administration officials who were there, including John Bolton, who is a frequent critic of the president, have gone on the record saying that this story is completely false. No one believes anonymous sources. And then this is in response to the Joe Biden ad I played earlier. He says, will Twitter fact check this video? And the sad part is that I think I saw a little bit of small print on the ad, and I'm assuming that it said reportedly said XYZ, so they can get away with this kind of garbage.
Well, I thought that was just the sort of thing that Facebook and Twitter and others were trying to avoid. Even the cleverly worded, sidesteps such as that, which, politicians and political parties have always done, that they were trying to stop that misinformation. If they really wanted to stop misinformation, this is obvious misinformation. And the fact that he's out there running that ad so quickly now, my suspicion is that, when you look at the polls, something like 5% of people in a lot of these battleground states are undecided. That's an incredibly small number to be undecided right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's sort of hardened in their position. And I'm not sure how much traction it really gets at this point, because when you look at the amount of mud that's been thrown at Trump for 3 years, but certainly just this year, it was this year he was impeached, for gosh sakes. That was only a few months ago. Seems like, a couple of lifetimes ago in political world. And yet he's at one of his highest points of his approval rating. None of this matters. Look, they can say, I won't even say what they could say. They could say much more absurd things than this. I don't think it's going to hurt him because they have turned him into Teflon, because they have been, pounding him so hard, so long. Nobody's hearing any of it. No matter what the accusation is, it's just background noise now.
Yep, absolutely. I mean,
this will disappear in no time. Even with this ad, they can spend money on that ad. I don't think it moves anybody. Certainly not going to move military people. They know.
I mean, they know. I mean, everyone on Twitter immediately said, listen, if you actually believe this garbage, then you're clearly not paying attention, or you're just so utterly biased. So speaking of bias, this morning the jobs report came out for July, and here's a little bit of that. So the U.S. jobs report rose by 1.4 million in August. The unemployment rate fell to 8.4%. Both of these are better than expected. And of course, the liberal media is ignoring it. But here's another interesting little chart that Kellyanne Conway tweeted out. And I hope everyone can screenshot this, because it says August 20th, 8.4 unemployment with a pandemic. Let me add a little bit to that. With a once in a 100-year black swan pandemic. Let me keep iterating that. A once in a 100 years black swan pandemic caused by another country. And August 2012, when Barack Obama and Joe Biden had already been taken over the country for 4 years. Okay, let's be extra fair. About 3 years and 9 months, 8.1% unemployment. Biden was the VP. No pandemic. I'm going to leave this chart up here, and I want your analysis on this.
So a couple things. First of all, great one, Kellyanne Conway. I look at that and I think, gosh, I should have done that this morning. As soon as the numbers came out, I should have thought to do that, because I remembered that his economy was still very weak. Well, it was weak the whole time and all. I think, part of this that's interesting is that when you put up even the first numbers, because as it says, everybody exceeding expectations, every single month since we started reopening has exceeded expectations. So we're not the only ones that play the game and make the mistake of setting expectations too low, right?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah. And so they do this every month. That makes the story so much bigger. I mean, if this was the exact same number, but they had expected 8.1, the story would be entirely different, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm thankful that they're always trying to downplay things and make them worse than they are, because it actually means when the actual raw data comes out, it's far better than they were expecting, and that just redounds to Trump's favor. The other thing is, back to the polls a little bit. I've just been studying the polls a lot because of my business, but the number one thing in both the polls that were done in Quinnipiac polls in Florida and Pennsylvania, the number one issue was the economy. And then now after that, it switched around between places, coronavirus or whatever. Number 4 was the sort of Black Lives Matter. It was racial equity and that sort of thing. But number 1 was the economy. And that was the only area in those polls. Quinnipiac is not a friendly Republican pollster place. But that was the only area where Trump was ahead of Biden in who would handle it better. And so then that was, of course, before these numbers came out. So, I think that certainly is a great trend for, those of us that would like to see the president reelected and save our country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what I was just thinking about? What would be the ultimate mic drop moment? So, okay. So we're going to get only one more jobs report. This is crazy. I mean, I'm blinking and my weeks are going by. I'm sure it's like that for you. So we're actually only going to get one more jobs report before the election, which is we're going to get the September jobs report in early October, and the election is November 3rd, so we're not going to even be able to get the October, sadly, because if that was a blowout quarter, imagine this. Imagine if President Trump can have such a troll moment where he has this once in a 100-year pandemic, and then he's still able to get this chart below where Obama was at with the pandemic. That would be the ultimate, in your face, I told you I could do it. And I think with one more month of another, 1.5 million jobs, or let's say 1.3 million jobs, I mean, man, that could, the unemployment rate just fell by 1.6%. Like, what if we were able to do another one, let's say another 1.5% and get close to that 7 or low 7s, high 6s? I think that, I mean, and according to this chart, I mean, it's hard for me to see it here, but Obama-Biden didn't even reach that until about 2014, it looks like, on the naked eye looking at this chart. So in the same year as a black swan pandemic, President Trump has a chance to surpass what Obama and Biden were at unemployment-wise, and they had years to get to this point.
So what's super interesting there is that this is an ad that writes itself, right? I mean, this would be an easy ad. You don't even need a 30-second spot. You can do this in a 15-second spot. You can put this ad together just the way you were summing it up at the beginning there. You know, after a once-in-a-century virus hits the United States and tanks the economy, President Trump is able to bring back the American economy to a stronger place than it was after 4 years of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, leadership. I mean, that ad just writes itself, right? I mean, a total winner. The other thing that you could add to that, which it would take away from the ad, because you need to keep ads short and punchy because we all have such terrible attention spans now.
Yes.
But the other part of it is he's doing this while two of the biggest economic engines in the country, which is California and New York, are largely closed down still. You know, but also Michigan and several other large states are largely closed down still too. If those states were acting like, say, Florida, frankly, in Florida here, a lot of Florida, we forget that there is even a pandemic, except to see the mask. Otherwise, we've been open and operating and, almost back to normal for months now. So I'm really sorry for those of you in California and other places that you're still stuck in that crapola space. But he's doing this. He's doing this with only part of the country having been reopened. I mean, it's quite astonishing, really, if the rest of the country reopens. My gosh, where will we be?
I mean, California is, I believe, because I remember once they shut down, I believe the reports were that California is like the 20th biggest economy in the world or something like that.
I think it's higher than that. It's in the teens.
And by the way, if anyone out there is from Florida, give Rod a shout out. Let us know where you're from in Florida. We've got a lot of Florida always commenting in. So if you guys are from Florida, I'm watching all of the comments coming in. So if you're from Florida, let me know where you're from, and then I'll read it out here what part of Florida you guys are from. So that's a great point. And it's almost like, because the New York cases now, and then we can maybe transition into some of the charts we brought here, but the New York cases now are so low. But I think Andrew Cuomo is so scared to death of seeing cases spike up again that they are keeping the state closed down. So I want to bring this up here. This is a chart that you provided to me. Can you tell me about this coronavirus chart here? I'm going to take down your call out caption here. So let's talk, because as a preface, everyone, the liberal media has treated Florida and Texas like the redheaded stepchild. They have said, oh my God, they mishandled the coronavirus. However, this chart is going to prove that, and then we're going to get into the whole hypocrisy of it all.
Okay, I will get there, but I would say I was watching the chat here while you were talking. And you're right, there's a ton of Florida people. I mean, I saw Tampa, Merritt Island, Tallahassee, Panama City. I mean, yeah, you got a lot of listeners in a good state. Gainesville, Winter Haven. Okay, I'll stop now. So the chart here is that it shows the blue is New York. What that shows is, of course, their coronavirus cases and the spike in them, which was a gigantic spike, right? And then the decline, and it took a while to decline. And so what people tend to do is they look at Florida right now and New York right now and say, oh, New York's doing so much better. But Florida handled it much better from the beginning. When you see the low orange there that's below the New York, and even when it gets up to its highest point, which was a few months ago now, that is that is what, about a fifth of what New York was at its peak, maybe a sixth of it. And indeed, our overall deaths are less than a third. Matter of fact, we have just reached the number of deaths in Florida that are the number of nursing home deaths in New York, which is a kind of a tragic figure. Two things you need to remember to even put this in more context. I mean, the chart sort of screams for itself how much better Florida has been handled. But two other points. Number one, Florida has a much older population than New York. So the population that we know is the most susceptible to it. Florida has a much higher one.
I've never thought about that. Everyone always says New York is so densely populated. Of course, they're going to have more deaths and cases. Well, first of all, they have less cases, far more deaths. But what you just said is one of the best points I've ever heard, is that Florida has a much older population. So according to everything we know about the coronavirus, Florida's deaths should be through the roof.
And they're not, and that's because of that's directly due to Governor Ron DeSantis' leadership, because he immediately closed off nursing homes. He closed off nursing homes more than 2 months before Governor Cuomo did. Governor Cuomo was mandating that nursing homes they were pleading with him to put him on that ship that Trump had sent. Nah, it's okay. Send them back to the nursing homes. It took him 2 months. I mean, those deaths, I don't like saying that deaths are politicians' fault as a rule and all, but those deaths are pretty much as close as you come. But Ron DeSantis, he closed them off. Matter of fact, it was just this week that he started a process after initiating a task force. He started a process for reopening visits to the nursing home. They've been shut off that long, but that has saved thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of lives in Florida.
Can you imagine if Florida had as many deaths as New York and New York had as many deaths as Florida? The media, I mean, think about this. Even with these numbers that we're showing right now, the man himself, Andrew Cuomo, is writing a book about leading through crisis. And I'm shocked. There's a couple other charts here I want you to talk about as well. So this one is about so is this here? So this is a California. We can't put them up side by side. So it's here. We have California and Florida. So first, let's maybe go. Which one do you want to do first, Florida or California?
Well, we'll do Florida since we're looking at it here.
Okay. So this is Florida.
Specifically, the new cases are in orange there. So you see a dramatic drop-off, a steady long-term drop-off. The blue one's very important. The blue is hospitalizations. So, cases are totally correlated to tests, right? The more tests you do, the more cases you find generally. But the very first one, the purple one, is tests. So even, those are going together. But the hospitalizations have nothing to do with tests. People show up in the hospital because they need to be in the hospital.
Yep.
But that has been declining week after week, month after month now. And then deaths now are declining for, better part of a month also. Now, if you flip over to California, you'll see not the exact same, but very similar. The reason why you don't have the first part of the blue in Florida is because they weren't keeping the stats in the way that the CDC liked it. So you don't have that. But you see the same thing, right? Generally, that trend is the same. The hospitalizations and the deaths going down. The reason I want these side by side is because California has remained shut down almost this entire time. Florida barely shut down for 4 weeks just because everybody, including the president, twisted Governor DeSantis' arm. But living here, I'll tell you, even when he issued the, quote, shutdown, that was just to mollify. There was a lot of loopholes here. Churches, everybody was still being able to go, And so, and then since May, I think it is, we've been open. And look at the difference between California and New York in the trend lines. Almost no difference whatsoever, which is just a killer stake in the heart, to my eyes, for the value of shutdowns. When you compare these two states, you're not seeing hardly any difference in the trend lines themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a crazy series of events and charts, because they think that the shutdowns are the thing that is saving. And so that's why New York is still shut down. Is that right? So what does Cuomo expect to do to keep one of the largest economies shut down until after the election? Because think about the economy, how it feels like he is sacrificing the New York economy so that the overall economy doesn't ramp up before the election. Because can you imagine if those jobs numbers come roaring back in this next month, right? I would say maybe it's by design that they know that, hey, maybe we'll start reopening in mid-October so that the jobs can come back and it won't show up before the election or something. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Now, well, okay, so I think that's an easy direction to go, but that never overestimate the power of politicians at Cuomo's and Newsom's level in self-preservation. I'm not sure any of them are willing to sacrifice their own political career to take down Trump. You might look at it as a nice byproduct. I think both of them are looking for higher political office. Certainly we know that Cuomo is. That's what a lot of this is about. I think one of the reasons they're staying shut down is because he doesn't dare have what he fears would be a second wave, which I don't think there will. I think the reason you're going to see Florida do well is because even a few months ago, they were at like 25% when they did the randomized test thing. They had 25% of people that were carrying antibodies with it. I think that by this point, probably they're not at herd immunity, but they're close. And it's not like, there's a light switch that goes on when you're at herd immunity. The more people that have it, the more people can't get it or spread it. And that's the way it works. The other part for New York, and this is just a brutal analysis of it, is a lot of the most vulnerable people in New York have already died.
Yes.
And I mean, I hate to say it that bluntly and that badly, but that's going to temper New York's death rate going forward from it, no matter how much they open up, because they made the vulnerable people so vulnerable to it. You had that massive death count in those nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and that means that like all the people that are stronger and have gotten it and are carrying the antibodies, all the people who were the most likely to die have died.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely see that, and it's a very sad thing again, but
it is.
It's true. And man, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when New York does reopen, because if it's this successful reopen where the cases don't spike up, they're going. So here's the thing I want to transition to. Now, sadly, we're going to have to use a little bit of coded language here, because there was, and I hope all of you guys can catch our drifts, because the webs, no matter if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, they have continuously cracked down on the information from the new numbers that have come out from a particular organization this week. And I'm not kidding you. So I'm going to just put it up here. It's this right here in the bottom left corner of your screen. The numbers that have come out from that entity over the weekend, we have had articles that have been fact checked. I have had videos taken down on platforms, even though I've spoken very fair about it. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful with how we talk about it here. But basically, what the new numbers came out over the weekend, basically what they tell me is this, is the fact that, look, the media marketed this thing as the plague of death. And I am the first to acknowledge here that it is absolutely a dangerous thing for people over a certain age and who are otherwise unhealthy. I understand that. I hope the overlords, wherever they are watching us, I hope you can hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. I am going full Jackie Chan in Rush Hour, okay? Please understand that that's what I'm saying. However, there's no reason in my mind why the American economy should not be back open at full 100%, get everyone back to work. I just got my hair cut on Sunday, and I've already told the story a few times, but this is the first time you're hearing it, is that the gentleman said, man, I had to keep my barbershop open on the down low. I couldn't tell anyone because, man, I just moved into a condo. I have a baby daughter and I have a wife. How was I going to pay my bills? So he had to keep his barbershop open. What did you expect these people to do? Meanwhile, you have not only Nancy Pelosi going into, that's bad on its own, but the nationwide protests that the Democrats have not said a word about. First of all, now we're not even talking about the riots. They haven't just started mentioning the riots because it's hitting their poll numbers. But even the protests, they are saying those are okay because we're going through a historic moment where we need historic change. Well, you know what? You know who's going through a historic change? Maybe it's that father or that single mother in some state out there in the United States who can't put food on their table because certain states won't want to reopen. Maybe she has a restaurant job. And yes, you can say, well, some restaurants are reopened. Yeah, but do you think they're reopened at full capacity? No, I drive by my restaurants and I see maybe 20 tables set up outside. Like, do you think that these restaurants are at full capacity compared to old school where, when I used to work at a restaurant back in the day where, we had every single table filled in the house, And so this is the kind of thing that just gets me going. So for you, what do these new numbers tell us that came over from this entity? And I hate the fact that I feel like we're living in 1984 here. We're using coded language. What do you think about this entity? And the numbers that came out this weekend, and also just kind of what it means going forward, what you think is next for our economy in general?
So, I was very heartened by the numbers very early on in the pandemic. I took it pretty seriously. I have asthma and I'm 60 years old. So, but age-wise, I'm on the bubble for being, be pretty careful. And that's one of the comorbidities, although it's a low one, but it is one of them. So I thought, great, well, I'll just be careful. I have a business I'm working, I run out of my a home office with, 1099s working for me. And I thought I'll just be easy. But as more and more data and information came forward, it became, a little clearer and a little clearer along the way that it maybe was not nearly as dangerous as they said it was. Very contagious, very dangerous if you're like 75 or 80, and very dangerous if you have 2 to 3 comorbidities, and if obesity is one of them. That was the biggest one on the list.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but however, if now with this latest number where it appears, can I say what the numbers are, or that?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it appears as though that of the 100% of the deaths that are attributed to the disease, it appears as though only 6% of them, according to the numbers that were updated over the weekend, apparently only 6% were only from the disease. Everybody else, the other 94% had 2 or more comorbidities, not just one, apparently, 2 or more. So what that tells me is, okay, this isn't nearly so dangerous as long as we protect elderly people, which Governor DeSantis did in Florida, and as long as people with comorbidities have options. So if you have a 45-year-old teacher, but that teacher has 2 comorbidities, then you make allowances for them in teaching. Otherwise, open up the schools already.
Exactly.
And so to me, it was really, really good news, which is, of course, why almost nobody who follows mainstream media knows anything about it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that has just been so interesting to me is that because of how they marketed this as the death plague, let's say, they freaked out when new cases came out. They treated new cases as if it was the end of the world. And I know, again, depending on your health conditions, that some people had a rough go of it, depending on their conditions. But that's why they're afraid to, not play college. That's why they're afraid to play college football, to reopen the economy, because they're afraid of seeing new cases when that is not a death sentence on its own. It feels to me a very simple formula. Let's protect the elderly and the vulnerable, and let's let the younger and healthy people, if it makes people feel better, wear the masks, stay distance, and get out and live your life and get the economy rolling again.
Right. I've been going to restaurants for, I'm sorry to tell you
Stop
guys.
bragging, okay? Stop bragging.
I just had a breakfast meeting yesterday morning. I mean, we just do these on a couple times a week probably. And honestly, a lot of the restaurants are filled with older people. And because I think a lot of people, at least around here, are sort of semi-informed on it. One thing I wanted to just take off on this, Clayton, is that for the states that have stayed open, a lot more, Florida, Georgia, Texas to a degree, a lot of these states, the Dakotas, that sort of thing, they're going to come out of this a lot faster because the virus has actually, the disease has actually gone through. Yeah, I know. Has gone through a lot more of the population. When you look at the case count in Florida is way above New York's now.
Yes.
And we know that
so much lower.
Right, exactly. So because we protected the vulnerable populations, that's just the key to it. And so I think that, Florida's economy right now is really coming back strong, way better than New York or California. And the virus is going to be much less of an impact on people because so many more are going to end up having it. Florida is going to be light years ahead of, the state that you're in and some other states that are run by blue people.
Yes, I know. And it's just another example of the disgusting propaganda that has just been pushed by the left by saying, it's the worst, Florida just really screwed this one up and I can't believe it. And you guys are putting money in front of the American lives when, some American lives are going to be lost, because of that. I'm not sure if you've seen the movie The Big Short. Have you seen the movie The Big Short?
No, I haven't, but I'm familiar with the storyline.
Okay, so yeah, so for anyone not familiar, the movie The Big Short is about a group of a few investors who shorted the housing market when in 2007, right before the crash happened. They saw the numbers coming, and said, we're going to short the market, and they ended up making a killing off of it. Well, two of the characters, they made their bets and they were so confident about it, and they started like dancing. They're like, yeah, we made this great bet. And the character who Brad Pitt plays looks back at him and says, stop dancing. They're like, what's up? They're like, you just bet against the American economy. They're like, yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. He's like, you know what happens? He's like, every time unemployment falls by, now I don't know if these numbers still hold up to be true, but I would say, in terms of health and suicide, whatever happens, he goes, for every 1% of unemployment goes down, 40,000 people die. Did you know that? And they're like, no, I didn't know that. And he's like, yeah, so just, you can be happy about the bet you made, but just don't effing dance, he said in the movie. And so, people take these numbers, lightly, and, Andrew Cuomo seems to not care about tanking the economy too much, because right now the narrative he wants to push is the health success of it all. But in the meantime, his economy is the one that's going to be suffering the most in the end. And maybe if you can elaborate on this, but many businesses are sadly never going to reopen ever again.
I heard an estimate that 50% of the restaurants in New York City will never reopen again. That's thousands of restaurants in New York City. That's thousands of dreams and lives just shattered right there. I was going to mention on The Big Short, somebody told me about that 40,000 one, and so I thought, that seems high to me. Okay, yeah. So I researched that a couple months ago, and the number, Larry Kudlow referred to it, and I researched him too, because I don't trust anybody. Of course, yeah. And so I researched him too, and it's around 11,000 is the actual number that you can attribute to it. It's like overage deaths from per 1% of unemployment. I mean, it's real lives and real loss. And so I'm sorry that people root for a bad economy to help political aspirations, but it's true. And I'm not convinced it's not occasionally true on the other side too.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's why I was like, man, should I? Like, it just came to me out of nowhere. I'm like, should I say it? It was like in a movie, like maybe, I don't know. But either way, tens of thousands of people die when jobs are lost, and I think that's the point there. So thanks for clearing the record on that one. Now, to kind of end off the week in a little bit of a fun fashion, in your experience, just in general, with politics, electoral maps, seeing the 2016 election, and seeing the past elections, I want to bring up an interactive electoral college map, and I kind of want to have some fun with it. I want you to give me your thoughts, telling me which states, kind of your prediction in a way. If this is the electoral map of 2016. They basically just attribute it to the same, two different candidates here. And how does this map look to you? Is there anything that you think might flip blue? Is there anything that you might flip red here in 2020? And in your estimate, what are the most, because I have my states that I think President Trump needs to hold, but I want to hear your opinion with your experience. Like, what are a couple states that you believe President Trump absolutely needs to hold and focus on, and which ones, as if he lost, it wouldn't be the end of the world? And then I want to hear your best case scenario of what potentially could happen, and then I will update the map on the fly as you tell me. So,
okay, so we're looking at the map now from 2016, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he's got to hold my state, Florida. That's a given. Everybody, both sides, everybody agrees, 29 electoral votes. And I think there's two reasons for it. Florida is probably the state that's most representative of the United States overall, because it has so much of an immigration, by far bigger than any other state of immigration. We have them from the Midwest, from the Northeast. So it's like a microcosm of the U.S., which is why our races are always so close. Like the national races are so close. All of our races are close.
Florida have caused a lot of headaches over the last.
You got that right. I've been involved with those headaches too, and so we've been trying to work on that for years. But it's hard when you have statewide races in a state, the third largest state in the country, and they're decided by 6,000 votes. I mean, it is really hard then, because then you have armies of lawyers on both sides. So, got to hold Florida, got to hold Ohio. And then really I would say Michigan is the other key, because with that, then I don't think you need Pennsylvania or Wisconsin at all.
So it's definitely close if Pennsylvania goes there. But don't you think that Trump has a higher likelihood of winning Pennsylvania than Michigan? Because right now we're out. Now, again, these numbers could not mean much. They could mean a lot. I don't know. But aren't we out registering new voters 5-1 in Pennsylvania? Do you think that he has a better chance to win Michigan over Pennsylvania?
Honestly, I'm not sure, and I can look at two polls. One of those, the Quinnipiac poll, again, a more Democrat-friendly poll, but it had Biden up 8 or 9 points, which is it was 16, so it's closed a lot.
In Michigan?
I'm sorry, in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yes.
Yep, in Pennsylvania. And so, I think, when you have Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, particularly Philadelphia, it does make it a bigger haul in Pennsylvania. When you look at what Biden says, again, when you look at what Biden and the Democrats talk about regarding coal and cutbacks and all, that just only helps Trump. But I think that's a tough one. Michigan, the Trafalgar polling group, which is a Republican-friendly one, to be sure, it has Trump and Biden in a virtual heat. They're within 3 points of each other in Michigan, and the black Republican who's challenging the incumbent senator is also even in Michigan. So according to Trafalgar, that makes Michigan, I think, somewhat promising, particularly since there's a lot of animosity towards the governor and the authoritarianism that she's shown in her shutdowns there. And so, I don't know which of those is the more likely. Either one of them work. You have to have Florida. You have to have Ohio. And then you need either Pennsylvania or Michigan, and he wins again. Now, if you want to go with the, pie in the sky, there's only a few, I think, that could reasonably be flipped there. Minnesota is definitely one, because we've seen that one close up.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
much.
And people are getting tired of we had people calling into C-SPAN after the RNC saying, I'm a mother here. I've been voting Democrat my whole life, but now I just can't. I'm literally afraid for my life, and the Democrats haven't denounced the riots at all. I came up with this analogy today. Joe Biden had all of June, all of July, and all of August to denounce the riots, and an entire week of the DNC. He decided to not do that, and now he's doing it now that the polls are closing. And so what I'm comparing that to is it's like saying happy anniversary to your significant other after they had to remind you to say it. That's how much meaning it has to me right now. Looks like we lost Rod. I was on my other screen, so he didn't hear what I had to say there. Hopefully he can jump back in. Let me text him real quick. But I hope you guys all heard that. There he is. All right, man. About to deliver my punchline, and you just banged out over here, man. Come on.
And I wanted to hear it too.
Well, the audience heard it, and now it's too late. I'm sorry.
You can't do a punchline twice. No, I get it.
So let me just say it one more time, just for you, sir. I was saying that, Joe Biden, so George Floyd passed away was killed in late May. And so he had all of June, all of July, all of August, an entire week of the DNC to denounce these violent riots, Antifa, all the buildings burning. He decides to now do it just as his poll numbers are starting to crash. And for me, I'm just saying that means just as much as it would mean if on your anniversary you forgot to say happy anniversary to your significant other, and after they had to remind you about it. So if your significant other had to remind you, hey, it's our anniversary today, and then you say, oh, happy anniversary, that's about how much it means right now for Joe Biden. And thank God President Trump is hammering him on that, saying, Joe, it's too late. You had your chance to consistently call out these riots, and you didn't do it. So looking at this, is there any other surprise state that you could see? So let's say he keeps Pennsylvania. Now we're talking Okay, you know what? Let me finish off by saying this, Rod. Earlier this week, so you and I were chatting a little bit, right? And earlier this week, it came out, the Democrats are already starting to lay the groundwork, to lay the foundation for saying, look, guys, the only way that we see that there's not going to be chaos and riots and bedlam in the streets is if Biden not only wins, but if he wins by a landslide. And so for me, now they're saying, hey, Trump is going to win on election night in what they are calling a red mirage. And then when the mail-in ballots come in, they say that Joe Biden is going to take this thing. So for me, I'm saying this. We need to win this thing by such a large margin. Like in the movie Remember the Titans, where he goes in there and he says, we must leave no doubt. Let me ask you a question. What would leaving no doubt look like to you in this election, to where even if mail-in votes came in a few days later, at the end of the day, it wouldn't even matter? What would a leave no doubt scenario look like to you? Is it what I have up here on the screen?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, so I got to separate the question there, because the leave no doubt one would mean that the mail-ins couldn't flip any of those states. So the leave no doubt one means that the ones that are red right now that are considered, purple states that are swing states would have to be won by a large enough number that nobody's going to buy a mail-in flipping them. So if you remember from 2016, if you combined, I believe it was Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan together, it was a total of 80,000 votes.
Yeah.
If it's like that again, I mean, mail-in corruption can easily overcome that, right? It could flip all of those states real easily. And the problem with the mail-in is not the Postal Service. I think people are focusing on the wrong thing. It is the voter registration lists. Which there is no state, including mine, that is good at keeping those clean. Because every time they try and purge them, which is the unfortunate term that's used for it, the ACLU and others jump on them about trying to disenfranchise minorities. And so what happens is you have these bad lists. So I have a relative that lives in California, voted in California the last 2 elections. I still got a ballot for him in Florida here for him to vote here. So if you take, and I'm not kidding, you start talking to people and everybody you know is going to say they know somebody that's moved and they're still getting it. If they're getting that, that means that the way mail-in voting, all universal mail-in voting is that a ballot is just mailed to every registered voter at their address. But those lists are bad lists. And so what would happen then is you would have people getting it. There's no way to stop the corruption then. If I get one at my address for Bob Smith, I can just vote on it and send it back in. They don't know. There's no way. There's no voter ID. There's nothing like that to do it. So that, and this is one reason why, and I have to explain this to people all the time, and I hope it doesn't bore anybody, but the difference between the universal mail-in that the Democrats want to do.
Yeah, keep doing it. Hammer it home.
Yeah, and the early voting and that we do, like in Florida, where a voter has to request a ballot be sent to them. We've been doing that for years, and actually that part of our process has never been a problem because that voters is requesting it. So all of the bad rolls there, people that have moved and gone out of state, they're not going to be requesting that ballot because they're assuming they're not on the roll anymore. So you only get them that way. If it just goes out to the whole thing, the universal one is it's sent out automatically, proactively to them. That's an entirely different operation and wide open to corruption. And your state would be the worst at it. I
got an email. Actually, let me see if I can bring it up here. If you have a few more thoughts. It's a quite shocking email that I saw here. Let me see here. Mail in California. So, that kind of, here we go. August 25th, I received an email saying this. Dear California voter, all California voters will be sent a vote-by-mail ballot with a prepaid postage return envelope for the November 3rd general election. All voters can now get critical updates on their ballots through the Where's My Ballot tracking tool. Signing up takes 3 minutes. So I need to look in because I've heard some people say that they have become, that the certain states have changed you to an exclusive mail-in voter. Have you heard that at all?
Well, I've heard them talk of it. I know that's what Michigan wanted to do. Michigan concerns me. I mean, California is a lost cause for the Electoral College for a Republican. But Michigan concerns me a lot there because if they do that universal mail-in, I'm going to assume that their voter registration list is just as bad or worse than everybody else's. And they could send tens of thousands of ballots to people who are no longer registered to vote there. And, some of those people are going to vote anyway. And, I don't know. You can't police that is the problem. There's no good back end for that. They have to claim that their voter registration roll is clean when they're not. They're demonstrably not. So I had to separate the question there on that, because that's why those, the only way there, I don't think there's any way there's not a problem on November 4th if Trump wins. There's no victory big enough that there's not a problem there. There's no overwhelming enough because rational thought and decency and traditional Americanism is no longer a part of the radical American left. It's clearly not. Just look at our streets. So I don't see that there's any good. We have a bad outcome on November 4th, or we have a catastrophic one. And the catastrophic one is if Biden wins the presidency and the Democrats take the Senate. That is a catastrophic outcome that none of us like to think about, because I have children and I have grandchildren, and I'd like them to live in a country that I know to be a great country. And if that actually happens, I'm not positive the country recovers from it as we know it. Sorry to be a downer.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I mean, I think we all feel the same. Are there any other blue states you're seeing on here that Trump you think even could surprise with?
I think there's actually. Yeah, I think that there's 3 to 4. Now this is pie in the sky thinking. Yeah. I think though that New Mexico and Colorado are potentials. Okay. But again, that's pie in the sky.
Colorado, that's hard to.
I know it, and yet what you're seeing there's a lot of Republican voter registration. What I don't know with Colorado is if Trump Victory Team and the RNC, the National RNC, is putting any money into it. If they're not putting money and resources into it, then even pie in the sky doesn't work, and I just don't know that. But when you put boots on the ground for registration and for voter turnout, that matters. Now, we're inundated in Florida with boots on the ground from the national level because of the importance of it. Trump doesn't need Colorado. So my guess is that that doesn't happen. I don't think any of those. The other one I was going to say was Virginia and Nevada.
Virginia,
I don't.
Virginia.
Again,
he got close. He started kicking Hillary's butt in Virginia, and then she just kind of surged late and won.
It's the DC counties. It's those Northern Virginia, DC counties that come in late.
Yep.
The Democrat ones always come in late. I don't understand why. Here in Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and West Palm are the heavily blue counties in the state. They're always so late. Everything is so incompetently done. I mean, my gosh, forget even principles and philosophies. Just look at pure competence between the parties.
Yeah, no. I mean, definitely. It's ridiculous. Well, Rod, this has been
cheery times, huh?
It's hard. It's like I find myself being up and down and up and down. I don't know what to expect on my day to day. But this has been a lot of fun. But hey, man, I was telling everyone, even though at there are some dark days that go on, this is one of the most historic. I know we always say it's a historic election, but with everything that's happened this year, it has just been one for the ages, and so it will be very, very interesting to see what happens going forward. Rod Thompson, man, I appreciate you. This is the longest live stream we've ever done.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry.
My wife says I have a lot of words.
Most of the time, almost 100% of the people I either interview or talk to, they're always on the East Coast. So I always feel bad. I'm like, man, it's already almost dinner time where you're at. And for me, I'm like, well, we just started the day. It's only 1 o'clock here. So right after Trump's RNC speech, I had Luke Negron, who's running for Pennsylvania 18, and then I had Tophertown Music, who you know from TikTok, and Tophertown's in the Midwest, but Luke is in Pennsylvania, and I'm like, Trump's speech didn't get over until like 11:30 Eastern, and Luke was on with us for like a good 45 minutes, and I'm like, sorry, man, I know you're running a campaign, you got to get to bed, but great stuff. So everybody, go look up Rod Thompson on Facebook. Go to therevolutionaryact.com where they're putting up columns there. A lot of them is from Rod. They have some really good thoughts there. Rod, is there anywhere else that people can find you? Because I know from the chats, people are loving your analysis, loving your input. Is there anywhere else that people can find you other than therevolutionaryact.com?
Yeah, well, if you do on Facebook, I've got a page there. They can check me there. Honestly, on TikTok too. If you want to get on the addiction of TikTok, if you're not already on it, we're there too. And I'm on Twitter at Rod_Thompson. But I've been shadow banned on Twitter for a while, so I don't always do a ton there. I used to do a lot, and when I got shadow banned almost 2 years ago now, then I kind of gave up on it. You know, it's something that all conservatives know we have to deal with social media. It just happens you're dealing with it on TikTok. So. Yep.
I have a lot of things that we try to post. Not only that, man, but on Google. Google runs ads on trendingpolitics.com, and there are some articles that they say we're not running ads on these articles, even though they are 100% factual. It's unfortunate, and it's going to get worse as the election rolls near, but let's just see what happens. So, everybody, I want you guys all to say, thank Rod, man, you guys, everyone's saying to get on Parler. Are you on Parler at all, Rod? I am.
I did too. I've only posted 1 or 2 things to it. There's only so many social media accounts you can deal with at a time.
Yeah, it's hard, you guys, to keep up with it all. But everybody,
follow me on Parler if you want.
Yeah,
encourage me to post.
Very important, everyone. It's Thompson without the P. He was telling me beforehand that it's the. What were you saying? That the English spelling?
It's the Scottish spelling without the P, which is the less common
Scottish
one.
spell. Yes. So everyone, Rod Thompson without the P. He's got a page here on Facebook, Revolutionary Act, therevolutionaryact.com. Rod, I thank you so much. And everybody here, it's been another amazing week. Make sure you're going to trendingpolitics.com all day, every day. We've always got articles going up. We're going to be putting up more videos on our YouTube channel. We've actually got a few in the hopper that we're going to be publishing here. So if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We got a lot of great stuff coming out. Rod, once again, man, I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
everybody here, you've been awesome, man. We got to do this a few more times before Election Day, okay? We definitely have to do this a few more times because the polls are going to keep coming. They're going to keep tightening, and I'm always going to want to hear your analysis, man. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So everybody, you guys all have a very good and a very safe weekend. You guys all have a good one, and I will see you back on Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you, everybody. I'll be talking to you soon.